Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and roguelikes and roguelites are easily my favorite genres of all time, and that's why like 75% of my channel is focused on covering them, and 2021 gave us some absolutely incredible games that brought me hundreds of hours of content. And before we jump into it, I just want to say that I categorize roguelikes as the games that don't have the out-of-game progression that makes you stronger like Spelunky, and roguelites as ones that do have a ton of progression like Rogue Legacy. I know everyone has different definitions and there's a lot of gray areas, but that's how I'm counting them for this video, just so you guys know. Also, I'm only counting games that were officially released this year, so if it's still in early access, it won't make the list this year. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. At number 10 on my list is Astronark, and Astronark is one of the best auto-battler roguelikes I have ever played. In it, you recruit a party of different heroes and you fight through enemy encounters where all of your characters auto-cast their abilities and attacks. There is so much replayability because you find tons of different weapons and items to equip on each hero, plus you'll constantly be upgrading different heroes and using different team combinations. There's also a lot of out-of-game cosmetic progression. As the more wins you get on the harder difficulties with each hero, they start to get cosmetic effects added onto them that motivates you to try out different, team comps and stuff like that, and potentially play for long periods of time. This is overall one of the best auto battler roguelikes I've ever played. Number 9 on our list is Space Gladiators. It's a game that's been in early access for a couple years, but it officially launched in 2021. Overall, it's a great roguelite that has combat and gameplay that feel very similar to Hollow Knight, and Hollow Knight has fantastic and tight 2D platforming and combat, so for this to feel similar to that, it's a very big compliment. There are a ton of different characters you can unlock that play differently, there's tons of items and builds you can try doing in each run, and there is actual out-of-game progression in terms of leveling up each character to make them even stronger. Overall, some of the most satisfying gameplay I've experienced in a roguelite in a long time. Beatblast takes number 8 on our list because of how unique it is. It's a music-making roguelike where you obtain more and more music notes that you place on your DJ board, and that not only causes you to be making your own music, but your weapon is the actual beat you create. There's a lot of depth in terms of what type of weapon you create, as each of the notes that you add to your beat do different things. You also find new instruments that are purely there for you to change how your beat sounds, and overall it's just such a unique experience I had to throw it in my top 10 because I love trying out roguelikes that create one-of-a-kind experiences that you can't get anywhere else. Number 7 on our list is TVKid. TVKid is a super underrated roguelike that boils down the roguelike formula to its core. It's a clicker game that has you fighting enemies by clicking on them. Every time you click, you deal damage to the enemy and they deal damage back to you. Every time you kill an enemy, you get to pick one of 3 items that will increase your stats like damage, health, defense, or more, and there's obviously super unique items like ones that have unique effects like giving you lifesteal or something like that. There's a ton of item synergies and combos, and so you have to learn how to create powerful builds that's strong enough to get you through the game without dying. It's honestly such an addicting game, and it's one that you'll find yourself playing over and over and over again till it's like 4 in the morning. At number 6 on our list, we have Trials of Fire, and Trials of Fire is a deck-building roguelike RPG that has amazing deck-building mechanics, deep RPG systems, and immersive storytelling that creates one of the most polished and impressive roguelikes I've ever played. Each run can last a couple of hours and has you traveling through the world trying to complete a main mission and side quests. You'll also find a ton of unique items and weapons to equip to your different heroes. You can level up your different heroes in a variety of ways, and the storytelling and visual design in the game is top notch. This is truly one of the roguelikes that has so much depth and replayability, you could easily drop hundreds of hours in this game if you wanted to, and you're definitely going to want to. At number 5, we have Curse of the Dead Gods, and Curse of the Dead Gods is honestly just a really solid action roguelike. The gameplay is super polished and responsive and similar to games like Hades, however it has a super interesting darkness gimmick. The game is super dark and requires you to carry around this torch to protect you. There's a ton of different weapons and kind of combos and stuff like that, and as you make your way through the temple, your character will kind of start going insane and you'll get random effects or modifiers or powers that kind of take influence from Darkest Dungeon. As you beat certain temples, you'll unlock harder ones, and overall it's just such a solid and polished experience. It's a game that any fan of action roguelites need to play. For number 4, we have Gunfire Reborn, and as of right now, Gunfire Reborn is the best FPS roguelite I've ever played. It takes heavy influence from Borderlands and has you playing as different heroes, finding new random weapons that are extremely unique and fun to play with, leveling up your hero to specialize in certain builds, and finding items that will drastically change your build and play style each run. You can also play with up to 3 other players, and the game will automatically scale the difficulty. There's a ton of difficulty levels to try out, and there's a gigantic perk tree of out-of-game progression to slowly work on. It does make the game extremely grindy, more than most other roguelites I've played, which is definitely a turnoff for some people. I've heard some new people or some other YouTubers just, downloading file saves to get through it, but it's kind of nice if you want to play the game for hundreds of hours, which I really think you could do in this game. Number 3 on our list is Muck, and Muck is so high on this list because firstly, it's a super unique mashup of genres. It combines survival games like Minecraft with roguelikes in a crazy speedrun way. It has you and your friends doing normal survival game things like mining material, cutting down trees, getting food, and more, but there are chests all over the world. And when you kill enemies, you get coins you can use to open up those chests to get completely random items and power-ups that allow you to get random builds and strats like you'd expect in a roguelike. And each night, more and more difficult enemies and even bosses eventually spawn until you eventually die because the game's too hard, or you somehow beat the game, which is really hard and something that I still have never done. It's so cool to have a game that requires you to get good and speedrun it in order to survive, otherwise you get left behind and dead. Also, this game's 100% free, so that is awesome. So definitely check it out if it looks interesting to you. At number 2, we have Loop Hero, and Loop Hero is one of the most unique roguelite experiences I think I've ever played. The gameplay looks simple at first, having your character walk around in circles, killing enemies and getting more loot like items and weapons and gear and cards that you can place, but as you play the game and discover the out-of-game progression that the game holds in terms of like this settlement building and unlocking of new cards and stuff, you start to see how big the game gets. The story that unfolds as you play the game and progress is also incredible and fits with the gameplay really well. Overall, a game you should definitely check out even if it doesn't look like your type of game, because you might be surprised. And before we get to number 1, I want to give a couple honorable mentions. First of all, Rogue Heroes is a great co-op Zelda-like dungeon crawler that has an amazing out-of-game progression and is a great game to play if you have up to 4 people that all want to play together. Also, Brutal Orchestra is a game that just came out that's super interesting and has a great story and is a game that I really want to sink more time into. And of course, games like Rounds and Inscription are absolutely fantastic, and I talk about them more in my top 10 games of the year, but I wanted to focus on just more actual core roguelike experiences in this video. But with those out of the way, we can talk about my favorite roguelike of 2021. And my favorite roguelite or roguelike of 2021 is Gristlands. And Gristlands is a deck building roguelite that is insanely revolutionary. The game has these huge unique campaigns for each character that all tell completely different stories and have you meeting new people, building relationships, and building not only your combat deck to fight enemies, but also a social deck you can use to try intimidating or negotiating with people in the game. It's a game that actually makes it feel like all your actions matter, matter, like who you save, who you kill, or who you recruit on your team, what moral actions you take, and more. And having 2 different decks that you're building at once gives the game so much depth. If you claim to be a fan of roguelite deck builders, this is one that you have absolutely no excuse to not be playing, and that's why it is my top roguelike of 2021. And so that's it for this year. This was an incredible year for roguelikes and roguelites, and so I'm so excited what the genre brings us in 2022. And if you want to see any more of the games on this list, I have full Let's Play series and full reviews for almost every single game on this list, so definitely check those out if you want. Also, this was my top 10 roguelikes of the year, but if you want to see what my overall just top 10 favorite games I've played this year, including games that aren't just roguelikes, check out the video I made a couple days ago that's on the screen right now. This was a fantastic year on the channel, and I can't wait to see how much we grow this awesome community in 2022. Hope you guys have a good end of the year, and here's to 2022.